Tempers flared on Capitol Hill as Congresswoman Lucy McBath tore into FBI Director Kash Patel, accusing him of gutting the Bureau's ability to fight domestic terrorism. But Patel didn't hold back. He exploded, firing back with a fiery defense of his record. This wasn't just a political clash. It exposed a deep divide over how America's top law enforcement agency is actually prioritizing our safety. Let's break down what really happened and what's at stake for the country.
Recognized.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for coming in today, Mr. Patel. In the past few months, the country has experienced a string of horrific, high-profile attacks that have been motivated by racial hatred or political ideology. A shooter attacked the CDC headquarters, firing hundreds of rounds and killing a police officer. An arsonist set fire to the Pennsylvania governor, Josh Shapiro's residence, with the governor and his family actually inside. Minnesota House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband were assassinated earlier this year. Clark and Charlie Kirk was murdered last week. Bomb threats have been made against HBCUs and the DNC, and just the list goes on and on. I only have just a few minutes today, so I don't want to take a lot of time to go into all the countless and devastating violent crimes and incidents that have happened at our schools or on our streets and in our communities that have just been happening all year long. Mr. Patel, just yes or no, is this type of political violence ever acceptable in your eyes?
No.
I'm glad that we agree that these heinous acts designed to instill fear and division in our nation are never, ever acceptable, yet each of these incidents has recently taken place under your watch. The FBI's website states that protecting the United States from terrorist acts is the FBI's #1 priority, including from domestic terrorists. Is this still your #1 priority?
Domestic terrorism?
Preventing domestic terrorism.
Our #1 priorities are protecting the homeland and international terrorism and crushing violent crime, and domestic terrorism sort of interlays between both of those.
Okay, so well, then I'm glad that you're giving us the right answer, but unfortunately, your actions kind of tell a different story. Earlier this year, you granted the ranks of the FBI's Domestic Terrorism Operations Section. This is the section of the FBI that is most directly responsible for addressing political violence in our country by preventing attacks from occurring and effectively responding to them if they do. The agents in this section are the ones who stopped an individual stockpiling weapons, who planned to attack schools and churches in Florida and seized bombs made by an ISIS sympathizer in New Orleans. And instead of ensuring that this section has all the resources that it needs at a time when its mission is critical, you fired its decorated veteran FBI agents who have served their country proudly under Republican and both Democratic presidents, and you scrapped the tools that they developed to fight domestic terrorism, including the National Domestic Terrorism Incident Database.
I mean, most of that is just not true. We have 1,700 current DT managed programs. We're up 300% in the amount of cases we brought against nihilistic, violent extremists, including 764, wishing to harm our children. The FBI and the men and women are getting after that problem set more than ever because I've unleashed them to do so. And any insinuation that these tragic occurrences across the country are somehow singularly my fault or disgusting because that watershed goes down to the men and women at the FBI,
Mr. Patel,
and they are not responsible for it. I'm happy to work with you to get them what they need.
Gentlelady controls the time. Unanimous consent request. You'll state a request.
Thank you very much. Into the record, an article from Reuters titled FBI Scales Back Staffing, Tracking of Domestic Terrorism, Probes Sources Say. Thank you very much.
Without objection.
I appreciate that. So, Mr. Patel, and it isn't just the domestic terrorism operations section. Under your watch, agents are fully diverting their attention to these anti-immigrant and city takeover operations, leaving our children vulnerable to dangerous networks of online predators, both domestic and international. You pulled more than 120 FBI agents from their normal duties to operate sobriety checks and conduct traffic stops, exposing the FBI's fleet of unmarked cars and thereby making it harder for the FBI to combat violent criminal gangs, foreign intelligence services, and drug traffickers in the process.
That's simply not true. If we were not able to do two things at one time, how would we be
Patel, I
seizing
reclaim
record
my
amounts of
time. I
fentanyl?
reclaim my time.
23,000
Chairman, I'd like to
violent
enter
felons have
into
been
the
arrested.
Time belongs to the gentlelady.
More than twice as many as
Consent
last
Time belongs
year.
to the gentlelady from Georgia.
Thank you very much. And this request basically is, it is an article from Reuters, which quotes law enforcement officers familiar with agents who once covered child exploitation cases, but now focus on immigration child exclusive. Thousands of agents diverted to Trump immigration track down. Mr. Patel, in the short time I have left, your tenure as director of FBI has been somewhat problematic. Americans are left definitely less safe under your watch. You have gutted the FBI's ability to keep safe from domestic terrorism. You have sent FBI agents to conduct traffic stops and round up hardworking immigrants who pose no danger to public safety. People even President Trump referred to as good, long-time workers. Your job is to protect and serve the American public.
Time to the
You have
gentlelady.
spent your time protecting heinous individuals and using the FBI to serve as a political circus. You at times have appeared unequipped,
Time
and
to
this
the
country
gentlelady has
deserves better,
expired.
and I yield.
Gentlelady yields
May I
back.
respond?
Sure can.
Simply put, what is it? Are we failing? If we're failing, how are we arresting 23,000 violent felons? Twice as many as this time last year. Are we failing? Because if we're failing, how are we seizing 1,500 kilograms of meth, 25% increase from last year? Are we failing? Because we captured 4 top 10 FBI most wanted from around the world in 7 months. That's more than the entirety of the last administration. Are we failing? Because we put 1,500 child predators in prison. Are we failing? Because we dismantled 300 human trafficking networks. Which is it? You don't like me, that's fine. But don't you dare disparage the men and women of the FBI that are producing record results in historic fashion to protect this country. They are kicking ass for America, and they're going to continue to do so.
And we appreciate your leadership. The gentlelady from Florida is recognized.
When Congresswoman Lucy McBath called Kash Patel's tenure problematic, she wasn't launching a personal attack so much as naming a pattern that, to many Americans, looks like a shift in priorities inside the FBI. And that's what makes this exchange important. On the surface, this is a heated back and forth. McBath lists a string of horrific attacks and asks a simple moral question. Are these forms of political violence ever acceptable? And Patel answers no. But the conversation goes deeper. It asks whether the FBI's actions match its words. Is the agency actually prioritizing the prevention of domestic political violence, or have resources and institutional focus been moved elsewhere in ways that matter when lives are on the line? McBath's line of questioning isn't just rhetorical. She points to concrete changes. Staffing shifts away from the Domestic Terrorism Operations Section, scrapping of the National Domestic Terrorism Incident Database, agents reassigned to immigration or traffic operations, and draws a direct line between those operational choices and the real-world cases she describes. That's what makes her critique potent. It's not merely that bad things happen under a director's watch. It's that specific policy and personnel decisions can increase the likelihood that bad things slip through the cracks. When specialty teams lose experienced agents, institutional memory and hard-won tools go with them. Those losses show up not only in investigations opened, but in prevention work. Tips followed up quickly, patterns detected early, and coordination with local law enforcement. Patel's reply, citing big numbers like arrests and drug seizures, aims to rebut the charge by arguing effectiveness in other metrics. That's a common and partly useful response. Quantifiable results matter. But numbers don't tell the whole story. Arrests and seizures are outputs. Prevention, intelligence collection, and incident tracking are inputs. If you dismantle the systems that create the intelligence picture, databases, long-term investigations, specialized units, you may still get arrests, but you miss the early indicators that would stop a massacre or a targeted political attack. Effective oversight looks at both sides. What are the measurable results, and what's being lost that can't be measured in one-year snapshots? There's also a methodological question here about how an agency defines its priorities on paper versus how it organizes itself in practice. McBath is arguing that domestic political violence should be treated as a sustained, specialized priority requiring dedicated tools and teams. Patel counters that the agency has unleashed agents across the field to handle the problem set, an argument for decentralization and flexibility. Both approaches have merits. Centralized units concentrate expertise and institutional knowledge. Decentralized structures can be nimble. The risk is when decentralization becomes a euphemism for diffusion, when specialized skills get diluted rather than amplified. The human element cannot be overstated. McBath invoked the victims, the families, and the communities, people who wake up every day knowing a political division could become violence. When she says agents were taken from child exploitation or domestic terrorism work to do things like traffic stops or immigration operations, she's pointing to the human cost of resource misallocation, children left vulnerable, communities less protected, detectives' specialized experience underused. Patel's rhetorical defense, "They are kicking ass for America," is meant to boost morale and defend personnel, but it also risks sounding dismissive of the specific harms raised by McBath and others. We also have to consider the optics and the political context. When the public perceives the FBI as being used selectively, which McBath accuses Patel of by alleging political prioritization, it damages trust. Law enforcement loses effectiveness when communities don't feel they can rely on neutral, predictable protection. That's where oversight matters. Congress's job isn't to run the FBI day to day, but it is to ensure the agency's structures and priorities match the threat environment and constitutional obligations. McBath's move to enter a Reuters article into the record shows she's trying to anchor her charge in reporting and first-hand accounts, proof that this is not just political rhetoric, but a topic worthy of documentation and scrutiny. For viewers trying to make sense of this, there are a few practical takeaways. First, watch beyond the sound bites. Listen for what's being defended. Metrics, seizures, arrests, and what's being criticized. Loss of specialized units, loss of databases, diversion of experienced agents. Second, ask what prevention looks like for a given threat. Does it require centralized subject matter experts, a specialized database, and interagency continuity, or can it be handled purely by field offices? Third, follow the follow-ups. Does the committee request briefings or documentation? Do outside watchdogs, state law enforcement, or community organizations corroborate shifts in FBI focus? This hearing is as much a lesson about institutional design as it is about politics. Agencies that confront complex, evolving threats, domestic extremism, child exploitation, human trafficking, need both the right tools and the institutional stability to use them. Rapid reassignments and dismantled systems can create immediate efficiencies or political wins, but they risk hollowing out capabilities that the public may only notice when it's too late. That's the core of McBath's argument. This isn't about partisan scoring, it's about keeping the structures that stop violence intact. If this breakdown helped you understand what was at stake in that exchange, like this video and subscribe to Left Lens for more breaking down of the bureaucracy pieces that explain not just what happened, but why it matters. Stay curious about oversight, because the way institutions are organized affects real people in the real world.